Hello, my name is Colleen Steppa. I am a therapist and I am a professor. I use these videos to show my students in class, but I figure I'll upload them on YouTube. So if somebody else wants this information, it's out there. This isn't associated with any particular class, it's just something that students tend to find helpful. So I made a lecture on it. This is all just information. A lot of it is personal to me, like my experience with getting licensure and starting a private practice, and then some of it I've just researched on my own. So it's not associated with any particular course that I teach. All right. So, caveat, my experience is really all I have to go on. Many other people do this process, and there's a lot of different ways. There are some similarities with all the different programs, but I can really only speak to what I did, which is social work. Just because I did something doesn't mean it was the best choice to do. It doesn't mean everybody should do it. I'm going to go through some of the things that I did that I wish I would have done differently, some of the things that I think went well. So hopefully it's just kind of like a reflection on my experience. Um, I would really suggest for anybody who is looking to be licensed that you try and find mentorship in the area that you want to go into. So, for example, I am a licensed clinical social worker. I chose social work because there's an emphasis on like the societal aspects of what's going on with somebody. So I'm not just looking at maybe their diagnosis or what their symptoms are. I'm also looking at the societal factors like culture, like poverty, that are contributing to what's going on with them. And maybe a lot of social workers have more background in doing more nonprofit type work, like maybe connecting people up to food stamps or resources or understanding how they can get housing. So that was something that interested me. I actually didn't seek out to be a therapist ever. I just wanted to help people. And I kind of meandered through the social work field, trying to figure out how to best do that. And I really like having the freedom and autonomy of having my own private practice. But I know a lot of social workers who don't go into private practice. So it's not an all or nothing thing with my field. Also, my logo, my friend Cedric made it. I'm going to link. Oh, wait. I think I switched tabs. Oops. My friend Cedric made my logo, so I'm going to link to his website. I think he did a really good job. Wanted to shout out to him. Okay. So how I started doing therapy, I worked at an agency. There was a huge amount of layoffs. I'm not going to say which agency. Uh, but basically I was like looking for new jobs. I was not laid off, but I was looking for a new job because I was really worried about being laid off. And there was like 100 other people who were looking for jobs at the same time. So it was very discouraging. I had a job, but I was really worried that the company wasn't doing well, or it's just, if you've ever worked somewhere where there's a lot of layoffs, it's a very stressful experience where you maybe get extra work that other people have left, and it just not a good time. So I already had a side business because I was doing freelance writing on the side. It's just something that I did to make money, like during college and during grad school. So I would just like find blogs to write for, or like copywriting, transcription. There's a ton of that stuff out there. And so one year I made enough money that I actually needed to pay taxes on it. And then I decided to incorporate as a business just so I would pay less taxes on that money. So that was an advantage I had. I already had that set up before I actually started doing therapy. Most people, I think, do it the other way where they'll start doing therapy and then they incorporate as a business. I'll talk a little bit about that. So I was working a full-time job, and I just started seeing clients 2 days a week after work. So I'd see like 3 clients each night. It was like 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. on like Tuesday and Thursday. So I'd get off work at like 4:30, go home, grab some stuff, eat dinner. Then I would go work a little bit more, which, yeah, is a lot of work, but I was kind of used to it because having been in grad school for a while, I was used to working a lot of hours. And I just wanted to see if I could make some extra money so that I could save up in case I needed it, also to like pay loans. And I was really worried about the stability of my job. So structures really vary at what it's going to look like working at a private practice, like an agency or a clinic. When I say agency, I mean something that's more like a nonprofit structure. So there are some places where maybe your entire salary comes from grants. Or there's places like what I did, where as a clinic, and it was a for-profit structure, and then I did not get paid a set salary. I was just getting paid per client, and it was based on what we were billing insurance, or some of the clients were just paying cash. because they didn't have insurance or there was a lapse in their insurance. So it really depends on the agency. If you're going out there and you're looking for a job, I'd suggest you ask some questions about the pay structure to see what you're okay with. Some people hate having their pay be based on like a client by client pay structure, because when you're getting paid that way, if a client cancels, then you're not getting paid for that hour, depending on your cancellation policy. And then your pay can fluctuate a lot. So some people really like having a set paycheck. Um, so the structure that I had at this clinic that I was working with, because I was not the clinic owner, I was just like a subcontractor, like a 1099. They did fee splitting, which means I was not fully licensed as a social worker. I had just graduated. We'll talk about licensure in the second half of this whole thing. So I was not fully licensed. I had just graduated. I was completing my licensure requirements, which is like you have to do a certain amount of private practice or practice with clients before you can get full licensure. So someone who was fully licensed was able to bill insurance, and then I was able to kind of like uh, almost like bill under them. So they did a fee splitting arrangement where the clinic itself would get like a large portion of the money that we billed, and then I would get some fraction of that, right? And that makes sense too, because when you're doing this type of structure, the agency is paying all the stuff for you. So it's kind of like a baby step into owning your own business. You are a 1099, so you are a contractor. You should have like a business structure set up for tax reasons, but you're not responsible for like paying the rent on your office. You don't have to furnish the office. You don't have to hire a biller, which are pretty big expenses when you're starting out. So I loved it. I actually really thought it was awesome. It took a lot of the pressure off of me to know how to do everything as a therapist. I could really just kind of like talk to my clients, set the schedule on my own, and then just go in and do therapy. And then I also got like free training, and I had a lot of therapists that I could learn from at this clinic. So I think that's a really good option for therapists who are starting out to try that. The cons are like you have less choice about which clients you get, especially when you're starting out. I just kind of accepted whoever they sent to me. Like a client would send in like an intake form basically on their website and say, hey, I want therapy. I want this kind of therapist. And then they would kind of just send that person to whoever had an opening who fit that bill pretty closely. I had no idea what my specialty was going to be in therapy. So I just took everyone, which was like not always the best idea because there were some people I did not understand how to work with very well. So I'll get to that a little bit later. Um, Another thing that does bother some people is you don't get 100% of the money. For me, I think it was, and for most people, I think it actually ends up being, if you're starting out, it ends up being a lot safer to work at a clinic like this than to be completely on your own, because you don't have to do things like pay the rent for your office or like furnish the place yourself or even do the marketing. So it ended up, I made decent money. I did not have a problem with that at all. All right. So what went well with my way of doing this? I really enjoyed just working with a few clients after hours of my regular job just to see if I actually liked therapy. Because therapy is one of those things as a job, it's kind of hard to test it out. I mean, when you're going through your master's program or like a PhD or whatever program you do, you probably have to do some internship hours. My guess is pretty much everybody who becomes a therapist, you have to do something. Uh, if you want to, you can get an internship where you're doing therapy, but there's not always a ton of those available. So you might not have experience doing that actual just like one-on-one therapy, like you're in a room with the person or in a room with the family. And it's hard to approximate what that feels like when you're just doing demos in class or role plays. So it was good for me to kind of like dip my toe in the water, see how I felt doing it, and not have that be my full-time job. I was very afraid that I would hate it because I had a lot of misconceptions about what it would feel like to be a therapist, right? I already had a business structure set up, so that was cool. I didn't have to go back and redo that. Although I kind of think that I screwed that process up. I think I should have done it differently, but I'm not going to go over that today. I also had a partner to share finances with. So one of the worst things about being your own boss is that you don't have insurance because the United States doesn't insure everybody. So having somebody that you could like share finances with, or someone who you can be under their insurance is a big, big plus, because then you don't have to take that financial expense on. I do know a lot of therapists who are like the insurance holder for their family or who don't have a partner, you can purchase insurance like on the insurance marketplace, but it's kind of expensive, especially compared to what you'd pay like per month if you just got it through your job. So it's not the greatest. It's something that we need to fix in the United States, honestly. That's a different topic. Um but if you have like a pre-existing health condition or something where you need insurance, that might be something to look into if you're wanting to be in private practice, trying to figure that out. So also what I did well, I think, was utilizing free or cheap trainings to build skills. So like I didn't have the extra money to be able to there are therapy trainings that are like thousands and thousands of dollars, like $10,000. And it's for certification. So you already have your license, and then there's additional certifications. Like if you want to specialize in like trauma or art therapy or working with autism or adolescents, there's certifications for everything. And honestly, if you want to be a millionaire, you can just like make the next big type of therapy with like all the cool buzzwords and acronyms and then charge people $1 billion to do your trainings, and you'll be set for life. So that's a free tip. Um, there's a lot of them that cost a lot of money. So really common ones that people like to have are like DBT, EMDR. I have EMDR certification now, but I had to pay out of pocket. Um, but when I was first starting out, a lot of clients want to know, like, what are your specializations? What are your certifications? And I was just like, I don't have any, which was maybe more like my insecurity at the time, but also I think clients are valid in wanting someone with a specialization or a certification in addition to just the bare minimum of their licensure and like expertise in that. So what I would try to do is just like find free trainings online. Like I found there were some things that I thought I should do, and then I just quickly realized they weren't up my alley. Like I did a free hypnosis training online, and I just was like, I don't understand any aspect of this. So I'm not going to do something I don't understand. But you'll figure out if this is what you want to do. You'll figure out what kinds of things kind of resonate with you, what's interesting to you, what service area you want to be in. I really liked sand tray. That was something that I thought was really fun and creative. I have a picture of a sand tray on this slide. You can see it. It's basically using like symbolic objects to depict things that are happening in your life or like maybe even in your dreams, that you can use it with a lot of other therapy types. Maybe I'll do a video on sand tray at some point. Also, telehealth is real cheap. If you want to start your own practice, you don't have to pay rent. You don't have to pay for furniture. You can just do it. You should have like a space in your home that has a door that closes, or like have your own apartment where, nobody's going to come in during the session because of HIPAA laws. But it's pretty cheap to set up. You just need like a few pieces of software. So when I went fully independent and moved to Arizona, I had my own practice, and it was 100% telehealth at the beginning because of COVID. And it was not that expensive to set up. So another thing I had going for me, MBA classmates. So I have an MSW and an MBA because I just wanted to be extra like that. But I had people who helped me like build my website and make my logo. I did not pay people for those things. I actually paid my friend for the logo, but the website, no, I just like found a couple of friends who showed me how to do it. There's a lot that you can do on your own. You don't have to do everything on your own, but you also don't have to pay the money that I think a lot of people advertise to you that you have to pay. Like if you want a logo made, there's a lot of small businesses. There's people who just like do this as a side thing. If you want a website made or if you want to like improve your SEO, there's a lot of people who do this as a side business, and you don't have to go with like some giant package if you just want a small little thing. So yeah, I tried. My business was started with no debt. Basically, that's kind of how I go about business. I don't want to have debt. So if I can't afford something, I just don't buy it, and I find a cheap way to do it. What did not go well, I have sliding scales now, which means that I have people pay based on their income. But like setting what those sliding scales should be was very difficult, and there wasn't a lot of guidance I had. And honestly, I don't know how to give people guidance on how to do it much better. I do have a slide on that coming up. Some tips that I think you could learn from my mistakes, but it is challenging. It's challenging because if your sliding scale is too low, you can't make enough money and you like, obviously need money to live because this is your business and you have to pay down loans and you have to pay for your expenses. But if your sliding scale is too high, then there are people who need therapy who aren't getting it, or maybe you're not feeling like you're giving people a fair shake. there's just a general societal problem that there's not enough therapy for all the people who need it, and it's basically impossible for you as a therapist to like solve that whole societal problem. So my approach has really just been like, how can I make things as equitable as possible while still making sure that I'm paid for what I'm worth, which is hard. It's hard. I moved states really soon into starting therapy, which I would not recommend doing because unfortunately, a lot of licensure is state based. I don't know why. It is very annoying to me. I wish it was nationally based. I don't understand why, like, for example, if you're like a military spouse and you decide that you want to be like a clinical social worker or you want to be a professional counselor and work with veterans, if your spouse moves, you have to get relicensed in every single effing state that you move to. And I don't know why that is. I think it's very dumb. It's just one of the things about the United States that doesn't make sense. There is a little bit better like state to state reciprocity now because of COVID than there was probably like 5 years ago. But you still, I had to redo some stuff and I had to pay a bunch of money and I had to file a lot of paperwork just because I moved to a different state, even though I'm doing the exact same job. Very annoying. So yeah, I also wasted money and time on like social media marketing. I think there's this idea, it's sort of problematic, like hustle culture-y, that you have to like post on social media no matter what your job is. To be honest, I don't think I've ever gotten any client because of my social media. Even if I was posting on Instagram every day and like posting like thought of the week or whatever, it's, you know, people who are seeing stuff based on my algorithm may not be in the state in which I'm licensed. They may not have the need for the therapy that I do. They are, a lot of them are just my friends. And so you can't actually have your friends as clients when you're a therapist because it's a conflict of interest. So social media marketing is kind of whatever. I like this YouTube channel now because I can distribute information into the world and it's really a hobby. I don't intend for this to be anything more than a hobby, but like yeah, social media doesn't make most people in therapy that much money in my experience. So I wouldn't waste too much time or money on it. I would spend money on concrete trainings that you can actually bill more. I found out that sand tray, even though it was extremely cheap training, I could actually bill, oh, what is the word? I could bill more because we're doing like a tactile, like a somatic type of activity where we have like objects that we're manipulating. I could actually bill it more to insurance. So I get like a little boost on the pay for that session, which is cool because you are using like an extra element. So some of those types of trainings, you can actually get a little bit more money. You can have an additional billing code on there. I would look into that if that's something you want to do. I am still afraid of insurance. I do not like it. Insurance is complicated, and then there's like all these laws and rules that change, and you have to keep up with it. And the billing is a little daunting when you don't understand it. And if you don't get paid for something, you have to call them and argue about why you need to be paid. So it's not for everybody. I did come to the realization that I wasn't going to reach the clients that I wanted to if I was only billing cash. So I do both now. I have sliding scale and I accept a couple kinds of insurance. I just think it would be great if insurance was less opaque, but you know, that is what it is. I also should have gotten a CPA right off the bat to help with incorporating in taxes, but I thought because I had an MBA that I knew things about finances, and I probably know things more than some people do, and I'm less intimidated by talking about money and business structures and stuff like that. But accounting is different than just like business formation or understanding basics of how businesses function. Accounting is a very specific skill set. Honestly, like if I could just go back and like be my own CPA and like go to school for like another year, I'd love to do that because working with a CPA, I wish I just like knew all the things that my CPA understands to just structure my business the best way possible, but I don't know those things. And at this point, I don't really want to play catch up. So if you don't know something, hire somebody who does, right? I was trying to do everything on my own, save money sometimes. Sometimes things ended up costing me more because I would do something wrong and I'd have to redo it. So, knowing what you're not good at, I have a high need to control my environment. So, if that's a problem you have, yeah, maybe just focus on like, if there are tasks where you're like, I am so underwater on this, get somebody else to help you out. It's okay. Okay. So what went really well about clinical experience of it, I loved working at a private practice that was just like a whole bunch of different therapists. I mean, this was a really, really big one. And there were people who specialized in just like everything. There were specializations I'd never even heard of before. And so I would meet people at trainings and they would talk about their work. And then I learned all kinds of things that were super valuable to me. And if I would have had like 10 more years there, I would probably still be learning things. So um I just love that. If you can be around lots of different people who are doing things that are kind of like in your field, but a different aspect, it's a really big plus when you're a therapist because you can refer out. So, like, let's say that I have a client who is struggling with their marriage. I don't do marriage therapy because I haven't been trained in it and I don't feel competent. I know a little bit. I know like enough to give people like a few pointers about like what direction to go in finding a therapist, but I could just knock on the door next, next to my office, and maybe there's a marriage and family therapist there. Maybe there's someone who specializes in like, a specific type of addiction that I don't know anything about. I met somebody once who specialized in cult recovery. Like there's so many different sub parts of therapy that you could do, and people get real specialized. So it's really nice to know a lot of people. A lot of people will kind of rely on like who their fellow students were when they're graduating, but it is nice to get like another pool of people too, right? Um, I also just kind of had an attitude of like, if they give me a client, I'm just going to try working with this client and see what happens. That's not everybody's attitude, and that's okay because maybe it wasn't good for me to do that sometimes. There were some clients I worked with, and I was like, so over my head. I did not understand anything that I was doing. And I referred those people out, but maybe it would have been better to not spend their time. I didn't know until I knew, right? I recommend, if possible, I came to doing therapy after I had worked in agencies like social services agencies for multiple years. Like I had worked in schools, I'd worked in after school programs, affordable housing. I'd worked in like a big social services agency that did tons and tons of different stuff. And I'd had multiple roles there. So I knew like a lot, especially in Minnesota, which is where I'm from. If I had a client tell me that like they were looking for housing or they needed to get on like food stamps or they had like a need for a specific resource that was like very niche, like a refugee resettlement agency for like one particular ethnic group, I would know what that was because I had been exposed to a lot. So not all of that really applies now because I live in Arizona, so some of it applies, some of it doesn't. But that was helpful for me. And I had mentoring in both states. I recommend finding good mentors. You kind of have to find mentorship as part of this profession because you go through supervision, although some people are just not very good supervisors. So I will admit that not everybody who's a supervisor is very good, but you can always find mentorship. Just find people in your field, whether or not they're licensed, whether or not they have the same job title as you. But if you resonate with the things that they do and say, and you like the way that they like act around clients, then you can get mentorship from them. I had mentors who were not even college educated. You can find mentorship everywhere. Um, I think also I was able to follow kind of cues of what like clients would tell me like, this is working well, I like this about you, this is the kind of thing that I like in therapy, this is the type of setting that makes me feel safe. I followed that a lot to kind of find what I was good at and find what kind of clients would resonate with my style. Okay, what didn't go well with my clinical experience? Imposter syndrome. I think that's pretty common for a lot of us, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're in like a minority group and you don't see a lot of people who look like you when you're like looking around to the office. I mean, most therapists are women, so that's not really a minority in that setting. But I actually felt really intimidated by other therapists when I was starting out because they all seemed to know everything and I just felt like I didn't know anything, which wasn't true. It really wasn't true at all. There were times that I was in meetings and I knew something other people didn't know because like I had had experience in social services or because I decided to get a business degree. So I did know things and I should have been more proud of that. Again, trying to work with every kind of client was good and bad. Like court ordered clients, that's something I will not do again. I understand there's a need for it. For me though, it was really hard for me to work with people who didn't want to be there. I've done it before. I've definitely like worked with people in public benefit settings where they're forced to work with you and they don't want to be there. And you have to do a lot of relationship building and, kind of breaking down defenses to be able to like get someone to be in a place where they'll like actually trust you and be honest with you. But in therapy, it just wasn't something that I wanted to do. It was just very exhausting. Yeah. So, as a rule, I don't really accept clients unless they are seeking out the therapy for themselves. I particularly do not like court ordered because then I'm getting dragged into a court process and I have so little knowledge of legal systems that I feel scared for my liability in that setting. So that's a one particular reason. Whereas like with public benefits, when people don't want to be there, um, I don't necessarily have to like get involved in like a legal battle if they don't want to come. You know what I mean? It's a little different. I felt more comfortable in that setting for sure. So, yeah, addiction, I don't know anything about addiction recovery. It's just not a thing I studied. So, when I had clients in addiction recovery, I felt lost. It's something I could study more of and I'd like to have like more knowledge of, but it just didn't it wasn't the thing that I was good at. I also should have like really spoken up a lot more. I recommend that. Like it's hard when you feel imposter syndrome to be in a setting with other people who you think are much smarter than you and much better than you and be like, I have a problem. It was hard for me anyway, but I should have spoken up more because I had clients sometimes that I think were just not a good fit for me and I should have been working with them and I should have talked to someone about it instead of floundering. Like a big thing that I talk to with my students now is like, if a client makes you feel unsafe, like if a client's yelling at you and making you feel scared, that's not a therapeutic space where anybody's getting any kind of good healing treatment or anything. Like it's not working for either one of you. Don't stay in that. I felt embarrassed that that was happening with me with a couple of clients. And so I didn't tell anyone at first. And then I did. I did later. Um, I also, with having the freedom of building your own schedule comes the like the burden of having to set pretty clear boundaries on your time, and also like pay agreements was a thing that when I first started with sliding fee, sometimes it can get out of hand. Like if you have a client who cannot afford therapy and you set a pay agreement with them where you're like, okay, well, so you're going to pay this much per session and then they just don't pay, you need to have something backing that up. Like, I'm not going to see you until you pay in full. Or like, we're going to make a payment plan and we're going to take a break of therapy before you keep accruing more and more debt with me so that we can keep this going. Because, yeah, if you don't set that up, I've seen other therapists where it happened pretty badly, where like you might have a client where they don't pay you for one session, but you keep seeing them weekly. And then it's like now it's not just like, let's say they pay like $80 a session. Now it's not just 80, it's 160. And then after a month, it's like 300. And that's just horrible. And then you get into a space where you're like the debt collector, which is not really therapeutically what you want to be doing. I mean, I would argue that part of that is like it's therapeutically relevant because you're talking to them about limitations and boundaries and all that stuff, but it sucks. So you have to have really, really clear boundaries where, like, for example, if I have somebody who hasn't paid, I'm just going to email them and say, or like text them and say, hey, like we need to cancel until you're able to pay. Let me know if you're not able to afford therapy anymore. Like if we need to figure out a payment plan, if this is like you need me to charge your card on a certain day. But like if this is an ongoing thing, then you can't afford therapy with me. Maybe we talk about how do you get on like state insurance? How do you find somebody who's cheaper than I am? It's like really, there's ethical gray area with all of that of like if you should even see a client who can't afford it. I would say no, refer them to somebody else. um and time slots too, like when I first started, like everybody would want time slots that were like really inconvenient for me, like at night. So sometimes I would be like starting my day and I'd see one client at like 9 a.m. and then I would be in the office and I'd see like another person at 2 p.m. and then another person at like 9 p.m. It's like no, just to like say no to time slots that don't actually work for you. I know everybody wants like certain time slots. They're highly coveted. Everybody wants Saturdays, but you have to decide for yourself as a therapist. Am I willing to be like working all the time, random hours? Is that okay with me? If it's not okay with you, then don't do it because you're going to be resentful towards your client. Um, I also, yeah, like when I first started out, I really wished that I would have worked at an agency that paid for me to get clinical training. Because when I like now in retrospect, I'm like looking at some of my classmates when I was in grad school and they had so much paid for and I'm here like paying it out of pocket. So if you're like in grad school, like in an internship and they'll pay for a certification that you can attach to your name forever, get it. Like get it now. Get it while you're getting it paid for. Cause it's all out of pocket for me now. Yeah. And also like changing states, I had to do networking all over again. So now it's kind of unfortunate because if I have a client in Arizona and let's say that they're like, hey, I'm really deep in like disordered eating and I need to work with someone who specializes in that. I don't like easily know someone that I can refer them to. Whereas in Minnesota, I'd be like, yeah, I got 6 people here. Which one do you want? So that sucks a little bit, but it is what it is. Okay, so sliding scales, like some suggestions on how to do them better. And I realize these slides you won't be able to click on the links, but I will have the links like listed below. So these are some tips for how to do them better. I would say first, like research other therapists and like ones who are similar to you before you set your sliding scales so that you're not way off base, like below or under what they charge, because you want to be like, well, you don't want to be charging way, way more because nobody's going to go to you. And if you're charging way less, then you're probably underselling your skills and abilities. And you should be aware of what you can afford to charge or not charge, which might be a little hard. You might need to do like a spreadsheet and make some math or something there. You might want to enlist the help of like a bookkeeper or somebody who can help you out. But I just kind of made a spreadsheet and figured out, okay, if I have this many time slots a week and I charge people this much like average, then I'm not making my bills. So I need to up that a little bit. So like what I do right now, I have a sliding scale that's based on income, but I also have some very low slots that I open up when somebody leaves my caseload, basically like a client stops therapy or they move states or something. Then I'll open it up on a website called OpenPath, and those go like immediately. So that's something that I'm able to do, but then I have kind of my regular sliding scale, which is like, okay, if all my clients were on this sliding scale, I can afford to stay open. I cannot afford to have all my clients be open path people because the cap that they have is like $60 per session. And I know that sounds like a lot per hour, but it's really not, because in that 1 hour of therapy, you also have additional like prep time and you have all these expenses that you're covering and taxes aren't taken out of it. So it doesn't end up being that much money. So it's hard to afford to stay open if you're charging everybody a pretty low rate. So yeah, and also you do have to have procedures for when people try to not pay. It really sucks to think about, and we don't want to assume that people are going to do that, but some people do. Not always out of malice, although I did have somebody who on purpose didn't want to pay me. And sometimes people take out anger on their therapist, and that's kind of a thing. But like you just have to have something in place for if people like suddenly lose their job and they can't pay you, like, are you going to be able to offer a free session here and there or not? And so that's something I've kind of built into my sliding scale. Yeah. And procedures for like, hey, if you haven't been able to pay me for this long, then we have to stop. Um, so a lot of places will set their sliding scales on like the federal poverty guideline. I feel like the federal poverty guideline is still like not really livable. I didn't really do that. I do base it on like their household size and things like that. Like if somebody who makes a certain amount of money has 4 dependents versus another person, those people are going to have different. I just have like a chart that I can refer to basically. I also have alternatives that I can refer people if they cannot afford me or they cannot pay me. And like I make that clear from the beginning that I am not personally offended if you cannot pay for this. That's just like part of the clinical process. Like you can't continue a service that you can't continue. It's just not doable. And I'm arguably like taking advantage of someone if they can't afford to pay me. So I don't do that. So some ways you can serve low income clients along with like sliding fee, because I think that is important for us to do as a profession, especially if you're a social worker and you're aware of that. Like I have a preset number of low income slots, and basically if somebody leaves my caseload, then I fill that with somebody else at a low income slot. An open path's a real easy way to do that. It's cash. Like it's just a directory of therapists that charge cash rates for therapy. don't go through insurance. And I really like that because there's a lot of people who are uninsured, and it kind of solves that problem. Other things you could do is accept Medicaid or Medicare. You have to do government paperwork for that. And maybe that's something I'll do in the future, but I am really unfamiliar with how that billing works. And I think I might like to have a biller help me. And right now, a biller is just not like in my cards. Um, you can get grants to serve a certain population. Depending on where you live and what grants are available and what you do, there's lots of money out there. You just have to find it and apply for it. You can also get volunteers or interns. Volunteers obviously cannot do therapy, but you can get volunteers or interns to do certain aspects of your business. Like if you collaborate with a business school or a school of social work or professional counseling, marriage and family therapy, then you can have an intern who can actually take clients. I think it's ethical to do like fee splitting with them, which means giving them a portion of the money that you are earning off of their labor. I think that is an ethical thing to do, so they should be paid for their work. I don't know if it's always required because personally, when I was doing my internships, I wasn't paid. I would love to see that change about social work. I think it sucks. Yeah, it's your call if you want to do that or not. Personally, what I would like to do, I've determined like my caseload's not totally full now, but once it is and I have a wait list, I think that's when I'd be ready to take an intern, and then I would do some fee splitting with them and probably have them take maybe less complicated cases because I don't want to have them like completely overwhelmed at the beginning. And I think it's also ethical to let your clients know that the person that they're seeing is an intern. I think you might have to. I'm not sure about all that paperwork wise because I haven't done it. You might have to let them know and have them sign a release just so that they're aware. But personally, for me, I've been a client of therapy as well as being a therapist. I have no problem seeing a student or an intern because they have a lot of supervision and they're usually pretty up to date on research because they're learning it right now. So I think that's really great because it gives an opportunity for the student to learn. Then there's a client who's getting cheaper therapy. It's pretty win-win for everybody. All right. So starting your own practice, some info on that. I would say like try to go to like free training online or get some mentoring. You can do a lot of this stuff online yourself, but it's probably a good idea to get some guidance. So I really like SCORE. That's part of the Small Business Administration in the US. You can use an online service to incorporate like LegalZoom or Rocket Lawyer, but it might be a good idea to get an actual lawyer. I would check with a tax professional first. Sometimes at SCORE they have those people there that you can talk to. Like I said before, I wish I would have got a CPA like right off the bat. That would have been great. I didn't do that. You should also be ready to pay a lot in taxes. Like, well, I say at year end, it kind of depends on how much money you're making. If you're going to pay your taxes at year end or if you're going to be paying them quarterly, I would just say like save somewhere between like 10 to 30% of your income and be like ready to pay that in taxes. If you also have like a W-2 job, you may not have to do quarterly tax payment. Again, ask your tax professional. It is not my specialty. But like I've been told usually 25% is a good amount to save. So you have a cushion, you can handle expenses and you can handle your taxes. And yeah, it's like a big chunk and it's sad to see that money go bye-bye, but it's part of what it is. Tracking your income is absolutely essential. I use QuickBooks. My CPA recommended it and he can access it. So I like that. I'm still learning how to use it. I suck at QuickBooks. It's been like 3 years. And then every time I have to do taxes, I'm like, at least one time I end up crying because I'm like, why didn't I know how to do this? So it's better, but it's better than just having a spreadsheet, unless you're like really an ace at tracking income, which I'm not. So a couple of things that you need just to like have a therapy business, a federal employer ID number. That's an FEIN. That basically is something that you need to like open a business bank account and do business. And then if you want to bill insurance, you'll need to give them that and also a national provider identifier. That's your MPI. So that's like it's basically a number that indicates you as like a medical professional, which we're classified under. And yeah, get a separate business bank account. You need the FEIN before you do that. I learned that the hard way because I tried to do it the other way. But it just makes it so much easier. You pay yourself through your business, like give yourself to your personal account checks or whatever. If you have a business bank account, you can much better track like the expenses and things. So like I just have my business card in my work bag. And if I'm going to like go to a work meeting and pay for parking or anything like that, I'm using that card just so I don't have to go through a billion receipts later and figure out like what did I use this card for versus personal stuff. Way easier in your life. Okay. Marketing, you can get a website. It's really pretty easy to like make your own website. You can make like Squarespace. Mine's WordPress. You can also hire someone on Upwork or Fiverr. I know some of those people don't really like those websites because people don't get paid that much. I would say like try to give people an ethical wage when you're looking on there. I've used Upwork before and found a lot of good people on there. Uh, or you can learn how to do a website yourself. You can list on Psychology Today. That's like the biggest source of referrals. It's $30 a month. It's very affordable. If you're looking for therapy for yourself, I would go there first because most people are listed on there. Real cheap business cards, you can get them from Vistaprint. Although honestly, I don't do that much in-person marketing anymore. It is good to have some. People ask for them. And LinkedIn, I don't really like the job ads on there, but I do have people sometimes wanting to collaborate on LinkedIn who are legit. uh, you can tell your colleagues and friends you can't work with people you already know as clients, but they can refer you. Like, so if my aunt is like, has a coworker who needs therapy, my aunt could tell her coworker to come see me, but I just have to be clear with my aunt and her coworker that I cannot talk to the two of them about like each other, like I can't go back and tell my aunt, oh yeah, your friend Susan contacted me for therapy. No, that's a HIPAA violation. I can't say if someone ever responded to me or if they're a client. So just make it clear to people that you can't tell them what happens if they refer. Yeah, again, social media, like it's never gotten me any clients, but I do think that doing stuff like YouTube or like having a Facebook page or having something out there that people can Google and look at and learn a little bit about you before they actually come to you is nice. It gives them a little bit of sense of ease. I also made I made a YouTube video. It's unlisted, so don't go looking for it. But I made a video of like directions to my office. Like I didn't do it like driving from my apartment or anything, but like the parking lot is really complicated. So I made a short video just showing like how to get to the door and like where where the parking spots are that you should go to. So you can do stuff like that just to help your clients out, but I would make those private. So it's just for clients or like I wouldn't do something like have a client only Facebook group or something like that because that's not confidential. But you can just have some basic info out there about yourself to advertise. And yeah, if you accept insurance, you probably won't need to advertise as much because people can just call their insurance company and get a list of accepted providers, and then you'll be on that list and you won't have to do as much. All right. So as far as equipment, if you want to do like an in-person office, I would just get like used furniture. You can check on like Facebook, Craigslist, or like online listings. There's a bunch of Facebook groups that are for therapists in like every state that I've seen. And people are always like, hey, I'm moving my office. Anyone want a file cabinet? Like you can get the basics. Really, you just need like a couch or chair for you, a couch or chair for your client, probably like a desk so you can type and write your notes. And then like a lamp, and I would say like an end table and maybe a bookshelf. And that's pretty much all you need. If you don't do paper files, you don't need a file cabinet. I don't really have a lot of paper files related to this. Most of them are just like uh, financial documents, not like client documents. That's all in my what's called EHR. That's an electronic health record. Even therapists who do all in person, pretty much everybody now has an EHR because it's just way easier than trying to do paper records. So mine is Simple Practice. I really like that one. Theranest is also good. I think there's a whole bunch of other ones like Therapy Notes, or there's a bunch. I get ads for them all the time. They're pretty cheap. Basically, it has all your client data in there and it's like HIPAA protected. There's passwords. So when I do online sessions with my clients, they just click on a link and then we're in the online session, and then it's like protected so people can't just pop in there interrupt our therapy. And then there's like preset consents in there. So you send consent forms to your clients and they have like some templates of those in there. They have a billing mechanism. It's great. Very easy. Also helps me track insurance payments. Although I have to do the actual insurance payment through a different portal, which I'm not going to get into in this video because that's too much. But EHR is like a lifesaver. It's like having a secretary. Like, it's very, very nice. Scheduling systems. If you want your clients to be able to schedule themselves online, there are options for that. I don't do that because I work in 2 time zones and I don't expect my clients to understand how that works because Arizona is so weird and they don't do daylight savings time here. So basically, I see clients who are living in Minnesota and who are living in Arizona because I am licensed in both states. And the licensure goes with where the client lives, not where I live. I don't understand why. It just does. So Minnesota is in CST, Central Time Zone, all the time, every day, no matter what. Well, Arizona is extra special. And so half the year it's in Mountain Time, and then half the year it's in Pacific Time. And there's no way that I'm expecting any of my clients to remember that or figure that out. So I don't let them do their own scheduling online because then they would schedule on top of somebody and it's too complicated. And basically twice a year I have to go through my calendar and like figure out when daylight savings is coming. It's terrible. I don't know a way around that. So that's anyway. Anyway, EHRs are great. You can do that if you want. A DSM, I have mine right here. I like the paper copy. Mine is tabbed so I can find things easily. I had a digital copy for a long time, but I actually like to be able to bring it out and show clients if they're curious because some people want to understand the differences between diagnosis, and I really like having like free information available. So sometimes I'll take pictures of a page and show it to a client if they want. Get books, workbooks, fidget toys. I have a ton of fidget toys here, which I like have not brought to the office because COVID. Because COVID never ends and it's very germy, but this one's my favorite. It's like grapes. It's creepy. I like it a lot. I had one of these and someone was so agitated they popped it. And they were really like, "Oh my God, I'm sorry." And I'm like, "Well, it's probably better that you popped that than something else." Um, I love these kind of things. Like you have a little Play-Doh. If you see people in person, it's really fun. It's not hygienic. I don't know how to sanitize all that stuff. For EMDR, you can have a light bar, you can have little pads that have like vibrating things. I just do the finger thing with EMDR because I'm mostly online. But there's also software you can use for that. So those are just examples of equipment that you might pay for. It's not an exhaustive list. So for telehealth, which is like 90% of what I do, so telehealth means just like seeing somebody through the computer screen, like we're not physically in the same room. I think every EHR has that as a feature now. I can't think of any that don't. So that's cool. There's no additional equipment. In Arizona, I have to verify their address and emergency contact and write that in the case note for each session. So, like, if, for example, the client that I'm seeing like has a heart attack or something else happen, I need to be able to like call 911 and let them go to that location. So I have to verify where the person is when they're seeing me. Um, and they have to be a resident in the state where you are licensed, which sometimes gets tricky because people like I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, people were like going all over the place. Like they were going to go stay with family in one place because their school dorm got shut down or something. So, usually, in my experience, again, contact the state licensing board of where your client is just to be sure. But usually, if it's short periods of time, like less than 3 weeks, you could still see them. If I have a client and then they go to like a business conference and they're in like Canada for a day, usually state licensing boards don't tend to care. But if they're going to live in Canada, like for more than 30 days, then my rule of thumb is more than 3 weeks. If you're in a place more than 3 weeks, I'm going to contact the licensing board of where you are, which is usually just a Google search. So let's say they're in Manitoba, then I might just Google like Manitoba Board of Social Work, and I don't even know what that is because it's a different country. But like I would send an email and just say, "Hey, my client is staying in this place. I am licensed in this state and this state, and what do you think?" And then sometimes they're like, "Nope, you can't see them while they're there." And sometimes they'll say, "Well, if it's less than 90 days, then you can do it, or we have this COVID protocol, but just check, right? It's important. Don't do malpractice." um and yeah, you can do EMDR via telehealth. You just use hand motions. There's also software you can use. And yeah, I have lateness and cancellation fees. They still apply. Just even though we're online, you still have to be on time. There's still a cancellation fee. I do not allow people to drive during the session because what if they get in an accident? I don't want that. So also, like therapy is really emotional, and I don't want you road raging all over the place or like having, someone cut you off because you're crying. It's a nightmare scenario for me. So I tell people that. As far as drinking, I don't mean like drinking water. I mean drinking alcohol. If somebody is like using a substance during our session, I'm gonna cancel it. Because you're not in a headspace where you're able to really like absorb the information or figure out what you're doing. Now, if you're an addiction counselor and you're like very into harm reduction, you can decide what you want to do with that. However, like for me, I just have found I don't think that there's really much work we can get done. So when I say drinking and smoking, I mean like drinking alcohol or like smoking like substances, not like nicotine. If somebody wants to vape and it's like nicotine, I don't really mind. I don't let them do it in my office though, because I don't own the building. So yeah, no other people in the session. That's really up to the client to make sure that that happens, but I do make that clear, like because it's confidential. Yeah. All right. So how to avoid burnout, just real in general, right? Like this is not an exhaustive list, but like therapy can be really tiring. And sometimes there are clients who push our insecurities or kind of push our buttons or our boundaries. So like, okay, maybe certain types of clients are not okay for me to work with. Maybe I need to like process some of my own stuff before I can see clients who very much remind me of somebody, that type of thing. It can change, right? If you do some healing work around something, maybe a certain type of client is okay with you now. Maybe maybe you have clients who remind you too much of like an active problem in your life that you don't want to deal with. Um, I would say more than moving away from work that you don't like, move toward things that you do like. And if you're like, wow, this kind of like client issue is so interesting to me, I just find myself reading about it. I want to learn more. I love this. Do more of that, right? And always having a consult group. So if you have a challenging case, you can talk to someone about it, even if it's just to express their frustration. Like again, like when you have a peer group, you need to de-identify information and not be saying names of people or anything that someone could pinpoint who it is. But it is important to have like a group of other like professionals to be able to consult with and be like, am I doing okay in this case? Is this what I'm supposed to do? Because otherwise you're just working by yourself and you're kind of like winging it a lot. That's not really good. You should be checking. And if you have a supervisor or a former supervisor or someone you know who's a specialist, it's great to consult with. Get your own therapy. I can't recommend that enough because there's so many things that you just don't know you don't know. And so many things that are like blind spots that will come out that your clients might perceive as like areas of discomfort for you. And then they won't share because they can tell that you don't want to talk about it. So it's important to kind of know what those are. Yeah. And like don't try to change your personality and try and be something else. Like I remember like when I started working as a therapist, I kind of felt like I didn't look like a therapist, which is so dumb. I don't know. I don't even know what a therapist is supposed to look like. But there were some people, yes, I do actually. There were some people that I met and I was like, that person looks like a therapist. Like they were, like extremely like they're like maybe very like thin and beautiful and always wore white and very quiet and like had very like good listening face. I don't know. Or like older men with beards. I'm just like a loud talker and some people don't like that and some people do and that's fine because there's therapy is very personal. So not everybody's going to like you all the time, right? Yeah, I also, as a rule for me, I say no before I say yes. Like, I usually, if people come to me with a new opportunity or a new project or a new business or job or whatever, I'm like, I don't know. Give me more information. I'm going to tentatively say no. And then if I'm really interested in it and I really want to do it, then I'll say yes. But like, I am always trying to avoid burning myself out and like biting off more than I can chew. And that's because I used to do the opposite. And yeah, I protect my time, my phone, and my email. My work stuff is nowhere near my phone, which is great for like HIPAA and confidentiality. I do have like a work phone number, but I don't have anybody's names in it. So, and it's on my phone, it's on an app, and that app is silent. So I can't hear it ring. And I tell my clients that we cannot use that phone outside of hours, like for consultation or therapy. It's just for scheduling because A, I don't want your private information on my phone, and B, I am not going to be like taking a call and like talking to you about therapy concepts on like a Friday night because I can't guarantee confidentiality and I deserve to have my Friday night, right? And also it's good for clients to sometimes like not have you there. As much as that might sound mean, it's good for them to have to figure out how to solve the problem on their own because the end goal of therapy should always be that at some point they do not need you anymore, that they're always building those things outside of you, right? um yeah, and I personally, maybe this is a luxury because I have enough like financial stability that I can prioritize time to learn over more money. Um, I just want to be able to do my job well rather than like have as many clients as possible. But I do get there are some people who don't have that option. Like there's some people, maybe you have like kids and maybe you're the only person earning money in your house, or maybe there was a job loss or something. I get it. You can't always do that. All right. Things people hate about private practice. Your pay can fluctuate a lot. So, like, for example, you might have an insurance company that for some reason has a delay for like a month and you don't get paid for all the clients that you bill under that insurance, and that sucks. You also might have a couple of clients who just all of a sudden stop coming to therapy all at once and has nothing to do with each other. It's just random. Um, there's certain seasons where pay seems to pick up, like New Year's. I definitely had a bunch of people contact me for therapy. It's probably a New Year's resolution, which awesome, good resolution. But I think that in summer it tends to lull because people are like having a good time. They're going on vacation, they're canceling sessions a lot, or they're not wanting to meet as often. So it's just good to like kind of know that your pay is going to fluctuate a lot, and it might be good to either have a backup source of income or some savings or something when you actually start that job, um, in order to be safe. um you either deal with insurance companies or you have to chase clients who don't pay, or both. You have to chase the insurance company that doesn't pay. Yeah, that's terrible. I don't know, I don't have anything else to say about it. It's terrible. You don't get benefits, which is also terrible. I personally contribute to like an IRA. Just I have like deductions come out of my pay. um but it's not as much as you might get as like a 401k match or something. You can get really good benefits at a like regular 9 to 5 job that you cannot necessarily give yourself in private practice. So it is important for a lot of people. Um, Setting your own schedule can be nice and it can be terrible. If you're not good at keeping track of things, like keeping track of the hours that you need to do stuff, or like, it can be challenging. Like if you have an appointment in the morning, and then you have another one in the mid afternoon, and like go and run errands. You have to be pretty good at like partitioning off your time. That is something that I've always been good at, so it's not bothersome to me. But some people don't like it. Some people just want to go to work and just do work and then go home. And you kind of can structure it that way, but you also have to be responsible for like doing all the things in a small business, or at least keeping track of all your vendors who do those things. So there's a lot of balls in the air, and some people hate it. Um, there's, yeah, a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of learning. I personally love learning, but if you really want stability and you just want to like do the same thing every day, that's totally fine. Some people don't like having to like have new client issues all the time and having to like look things up all the time. Um, Oh, I wish sometimes. I do not miss having a boss. I don't miss having someone breathe on my neck, but I really sometimes just wish I had like a person that I can I could just be like, "Hey, this client, I don't know what to do," or like this situation, I don't know what to do. Can you just show me how to do it? Can you handle it for me? Like I don't have anyone to do that. So like if I have like a discrepancy and I send something to my CPA and then he's like, "Where is this like the money doesn't add up." I wish I could just be like CC my boss and be like, "Hey, can you handle this? I don't understand." I can't do that. I have to do it. Yeah, and sometimes there are issues that like don't have a clear-cut solution, right? Like maybe you have a disagreement with your client and you're like, "Oh, how should I handle this?" Like I know I have to figure out how to like preserve our relationship, but also this disagreement is kind of like maybe, you have just opposed stances on something and one of you offended the other. Maybe your client offended you and you're not sure how to deal with it and you just want someone to be there and like do it for you or like help you out. You can't do that. Yeah. And the thing I miss the most is you have no coworkers. Or if you do, I mean, sometimes you like you're the boss, but then like you don't have peers. I really miss having like birthday parties at work. I miss having lunch with a bunch of people. Yeah, that's partially COVID, but also like it's not just COVID. It's like me being a like, my own business person. Cause if I had like moved here and then started working in an agency, I would have coworkers, even though they'd be online, and we could maybe chat with each other online in the middle of the day and stuff. So I miss that. I really like that. Yeah. Okay. So wait. That's the end of this one. I'm actually going to make a separate video about licensure because this got really long. So thank you if you listened to all of this. I hope it was helpful for you. Again, my experience doesn't apply to absolutely everybody, but it's a good overview, I think, of just kind of like what you need to know about basics. And again, getting a mentor will help you a lot in this process. So thanks for joining. I hope you have a great day and